Hello everyone, I hope you're having a happy Friday so far. I can't believe we've already made it through a whole nother week of school. But today we're going to start out with reading and module for May 8th. It is day 27. So we're going to start out with our reading and module first. And the very first thing you're doing is checking out that module video that is in the description below. You're going to watch that video and you're going to follow along on page 16 and 17 as they read the story, Which Tree, which is on page 16 and 17. And you're also going to listen to that poem again on page 13 that is called Trees in Our Community. So after you've listened to Trees in Our Community and Which Trees, you are going to think about the similarities and the differences between those two stories. So you're going to find things that are alike and then things that are different between the two stories and text, Which Tree and Trees in Our Community. So I'm going to show you what that's going to look like with our similarities and differences. And you are going to draw me two different pictures. So the first picture you're going to draw me is going to tell me a similarity. So you're going to look through the poem and the text, Which Tree, and you're going to find something that is the same between both of them. So something that both of those texts talk about. So you're going to draw me a picture and then write a sentence to match using this sentence frame. Within the two texts, a similarity is that leaves change colors. So I noticed in both the poem and in the story Which Tree, it talks about leaves changing colors. So I drew a picture of my orange and green and yellow and red leaves on that tree, and then I filled in that sentence frame. I put my answer right here. After you have found a similarity, you are going to find the opposite. You're going to find a difference. So I've got the same thing here. I've got a sentence frame and my response and a picture. And after looking at both the poem and the story, I noticed that only one of those, only the poem, talks about how trees protect homes from storms and wind. So I filled in my sentence frame to say, within the two texts, a difference is that the poem says trees protect from storms. So that was something that only one of those texts talk about. And so that was my difference. And that is what you are doing for reading today. And after that, we are moving into word work. Alrighty, for word work today, we are playing Hoppin'. So you are going to get your high frequency words or those sight words. They're the same thing. They are on that list that I sent out in Dojo of the 39 sight words. And you are going to use those words to write on either cards or paper, or you can even use chalk outside to write. And you're going to hop, you can scooter by, you can jump, you can do whatever you want, cartwheel, whatever you can think of, across those different words as you say the sight word. So you're going to go by each high frequency word and say that word as you land on it. After that, I want you to grab a pencil and a piece of paper, and we are going to quickly walk through a few rhyming words. So I'm going to give you a high frequency word, and I want you to come up with any word that rhymes with it in either your journal or on a separate sheet of paper. So our first word is will. I want you to rhyme with the word will. And remember, when we rhyme, we are just changing that first letter. So I want you to write down a rhyming word for will. Now I want you to give me a rhyming word for the word all. All. And you can put a new letter in front of this word to make a rhyming word. All. Okay, we've got a few more we're going to go through. The next word that I want you to rhyme with is with. With. Rhyme with the word with. The next word that I want you to rhyme with is do. Do. Rhyming with that word do. And we have one more word that I want you to rhyme with. And that word is on. On. You're going to rhyme with that word on. Awesome. After you have written down all of those rhyming words, I want you to snap a picture of all your work that you've done so far, and you're going to upload it on Dojo to your portfolio. Alrighty, it's time for math today, and the very first thing we're doing is grabbing something to write with, and we're grabbing our journal or a piece of paper, and I want you to draw two shapes for me. But before you draw those two shapes, I want to give you a little bit of a hint of what shapes you're going to draw. So, I have a shape in this hand, and I have a shape in this hand. If you were to take these two shapes and count all of their sides together, I would have 7 sides on my shapes. So, I want you to draw two different shapes that together have 7 sides. So that's the first thing we're doing in math. The next thing I want you to do is grab your shape robot from yesterday. And you are going to flip to page 10 in your packet. That should look familiar from yesterday. But today we are filling in this chart on the bottom. So what you're going to do is you're going to tell me what shapes did you use for your robot's head. So I'm going to look at my robot's head, and for his head I used a triangle. So I would write triangle. Then it says number of sides. And how many sides does a triangle have? 1, 2, 3. So I would write 3. Then you're going to tell me the number of angles. And an angle is the inside of a corner. So we know that corners or vertices, that's a really big word, I know. Corners look like this. So we have our different corners. And if I counted the corners on my triangle, there would be 1, 2, 3. Now the angles are the inside of the corner. So if you have a corner right here, the inside is going to be your angle. So here's my corner, and inside here, right in here, is my angle. So if I have 3 corners, that means I have to have 3 angles as well. So however many corners you have, you're going to have the same number of angles. So then after I've done that, I'm jumping down to the body, and I'm going to look at what shape I used for the body. And I used a rectangle. So I'm going to fill that chart out across the body line with all of the information for a rectangle. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 sides on my rectangle. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 corners on my rectangle. And inside those corners there are 1, 2, 3, 4 angles. So you are filling out that chart for the robot that you made. And after you do that, you're going to flip to the next page, page 11. And you are going to do the exit ticket right here for day 7. I'm sorry, for day 27, right here. And once you've done that exit ticket, you are all done with your math work for today. Last but not least, we have social studies. And in social studies today, we are talking about climate again. So before we get started, I want you to watch the video that's in the description below, all about climate. It's really helpful. It's going to help you understand the difference between climate and the difference between weather. Now that you've heard all about climate, what you're going to do is come up with a chart. So I've made a T-chart. I thought that was the easiest. That's going to tell me things that you can do in our climate in Charlotte. So what are things that you get to do because of the nice climate that Charlotte has? And then you're going to pick another climate. So you could pick the desert, you could pick the rainforest, maybe you want to pick the polar or the Arctic climate. You can pick any climate, and you're going to come up with things that people can do in that climate. So I have an example for you. I've got my T-chart, and it says things you can do in, and the first one everyone's doing is Charlotte's climate, so where we live. And things that you can do in Charlotte's climate that maybe you can't do in all climates is ride a bike year-round. So Charlotte pretty much has good weather all year round to where you can go outside and ride a bike if you wanted to. Another thing I have is that you can play outside all day long in Charlotte. There is always pretty weather. If it's raining, you can still splash in those puddles. It's never too cold to where you're gonna freeze if you go outside. So those are some fun things about Charlotte's climate. Then I chose to go over the Arctic climate, so the polar climate. And I said that in the Arctic climate, all year round or just like most of the time, you can build an igloo because of that climate. It's pretty hard to build an igloo in Charlotte, but in the Arctic, you could build an igloo any day you wanted to. And the other thing I chose, I don't know if you can see that, is that you can sled year-round. I love going sledding, but sadly, you cannot sled year-round in Charlotte. But that's something that you can do in the Arctic climate pretty often. So you are coming up with things that you can do in our climate, and then you're going to pick another climate and think of things that you could do in that climate. So I can't wait to see the different lists that you guys come up with, and I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all on Monday.